There is an epidemic happening in men today. Weakness and comfort has taken place of strength and purpose. Masculinity is labeled as toxic, and women are now the ones who define what a man is, more than men are. Weak fathers are raising lost boys who are at risk of never being initiated into manhood. We've grown farther and farther from God, which led us to become weaker and weaker. The man within fights back by introducing men to their true strength and purpose through God. So join me, and together we can restore true strength and purpose in men. Hello, and welcome to the Man Within podcast. If you're just tuning in for the first time, the Man Within is all about men helping men. So what we're doing here is helping men grow in their faith, helping them grow personally as a man, helping them grow in their business, grow in their confidence so they can go on to confidently pursue what God has called them to do and become the man that God has called them to be. So today we are going to sort of challenge a little bit of our pride. We are going to challenge our perspectives and open up our mind to receive some new perspectives, because the more perspectives you have, the more that you can see things differently, the more power you have at your disposal. So that is what we are going to do. You might be offended a little bit. You might have a few instances where things start to get a little cringy, but that's a good thing. That's a good sign that a wall needs to come down and you are in the process of growing. So with all that being said, let's get rolling right into it. One of the most confusing things that I've learned about human nature is the difference between masculine and feminine energy. Even more confusing was learning that both men and women grow through masculine and feminine energies. Men aren't masculine 100% of the time, and women aren't feminine 100% of the time. And that's a good thing. And as counterintuitive as that sounds, it's actually necessary for growth. Trust me, the first time someone tried to sell me on the idea that men are both masculine and feminine, I rejected it immediately. I thought it was nonsense. How could a man be feminine at all? But as I've learned more and more about what it takes to grow fully, I've learned more and more about God's design for human nature. Now, I'm not denying that there are many differences between men and women. And I'm not denying that our needs are very different. God made men and women different, which means we're naturally going to be better at some things and worse at another. Instead of trying to compete with the other sex, we should try learning from them, learning from their strengths. It may not seem like men have anything to learn from women, or vice versa. Why would a man ever need to talk about his feelings? Likewise, why should a woman ever learn how to change a tire? Well, sometimes it serves us best to learn from the other sex. So what I want to talk about today is how we can use masculine and feminine energy in order to grow fully and according to God's design. When thinking about men and masculinity, you probably picture a tough, rugged man with a chiseled jaw and a dark backstory. He's an image of strength and confidence. He has no fear, and no man would ever want to mess with him. There isn't a soft bone in his body, and he doesn't need anyone to help him. He's a lone wolf. But if we want to take an example of what a man should look like, we should be looking at Jesus. Does the man I just described sound like Jesus, the way he was described? Jesus didn't go on his mission alone. He wasn't a lone wolf. He encountered a lot of difficult and painful trials that came from the world. But he didn't use that as an excuse to shut everyone else out. If anyone truly didn't need anyone's help, it would have been him. But instead, he came to show us what a true follower looks like. He was compassionate and gentle with others. He didn't judge others, and he shared the truth in a powerful yet loving way. He had patience and love for us that is greater than anything we could ever compare to. But he was also strong, not just physically, but in every way, spiritually, mentally, faithfully. He had a clear mission, and he stood firm in the truth. He didn't let anything stop him from doing what he came here to do. He was a very well-rounded man. The problem that humans have is that we tend to go from one extreme to the other, meaning in today's culture, men are being led down one of two paths. Either you want to become the rich womanizer who lives this lavish lifestyle, doesn't need help from anyone, and shuts himself off from the rest of the world. Or you can be led to being a weak, feminine man that rejects anything to do with masculinity because he's told that men are the problem and masculinity inherently is toxic. But just like every other path the world wants you to take, they both lead to destruction. There is a correct path. According to Psalm 119, 105, which says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." The Bible has many verses on the path to take. And that's very important because the world has a lot of distractions. The world's going to try to lead us astray. That's the whole objective of the enemy, is to separate us from God by leading us down a tempting and dangerous path. But the path that God wants you on is the right one. The only catch is that it's going to be a difficult one. Depending on which road you're on, you'll either have to embrace more masculine energy or more feminine energy. But either way, I bet that made you cringe a little bit. I bet some of what I've said already has made you cringe a little bit. That's a sign that you have a wall that needs to come down. You need to let that barrier down so you can be open-minded and take in a new perspective so you can learn and grow. Now, I know it sounds cringy, telling a man that he does need to have equal masculine and feminine energy. I know it because I've been there. So how do we break that wall down? As men, our natural strengths do not include emotional awareness and connection. Let's just be honest. It's not common to find a group of men getting around in a circle and talking about their feelings. It doesn't come natural to us. We don't have a lot of patience, and we can be pretty dismissive if we don't think someone is adding any value to us, to our bank account, or to our mission. This doesn't make you a bad person per se. It just means you're a man. And naturally, you have the natural instincts of a man. Now, here's what I mean. The ultimate essence and purpose of masculinity is to fight for your mission against all costs. The masculine energy doesn't care about pain, whether that pain is inflicted on you or someone else. It only cares about doing whatever it takes to achieve its purpose. This is the energy that leads men to go to war on the battlefield or in their career. It's what makes a man pursue his purpose against all odds, against all risk. It motivates men to work longer hours, take on more risk, because that's what needs to be done in order to achieve that goal. If your family is in danger, you want masculinity. When you're starting a business, you need masculinity. For thousands of years, men didn't have the privilege to just sit at home in a soft environment that didn't require any sacrifice or responsibility. It used to be expected that the men would go to war for months or even years. And when they got home, they would continue to train for war. That was their occupation. And if they couldn't fight, if they were too old to go to battle, they would be assigned another difficult task that only a man could do. But the highest honor a man could have was dying for his country and providing for his family. There isn't much room for softness in that. And this creates a problem because a lot of men derive all of their value based on how well they can fight or how well they can provide. But the completeness of a man goes well beyond that. There are times when work just needs to get done and emotions and feelings just kind of get in the way. It doesn't require much emotion to grind out a 12-hour day in the hot sun, either baling hay or pouring concrete, but it does require masculine energy to get the job done. Now, if you're a man listening to this, it might be hard to see how getting in touch with your emotions could help you grow. That's because you're only thinking about what it will take to get the things that men want, meaning money, women, cars, a successful business, a title, material things. But why do you want these things? What will you get from them? Ultimately, you believe that these things, the things that men want, will allow you to build a family, build your faith, and create deep and meaningful relationships, all of which require feminine energy. In other words, you think that living in a masculine state 100% of the time is what will earn you the right to enjoy the gifts of feminine energy. but there is a flaw in your thinking. In order to grow fully, you need both masculine and feminine energy. In order to grow deeper in your faith, you need masculine and feminine energy. In order to earn the things in life that you really want, whether it's money or a family, you need both masculine and feminine energy. You don't get what you haven't practiced. If you haven't practiced exercising and utilizing the gifts of feminine energy, don't expect to magically receive her gifts. There is a lot of feminine energy in some of the greatest gifts a man could have: love, kindness, wisdom, which the Bible refers to as a woman in Proverbs, faith, connection, intimacy, everything that happens outside of work, everything that happens outside of fighting for your purpose, everything that happens outside of masculinity. But think about this. Why are you fighting so hard? What's the point of working so hard if you have nothing to come home to? If you haven't prepared those gifts in a feminine way? It's not healthy to be in a masculine or feminine state 100% of the time, whether you're a man or a woman. Masculine energy helps us take action without emotion, but the formula for growth isn't action alone. The formula for growth that God gave us is faith plus action. Faith plus action is equal to growth. Now, this is where the feminine energy steps in. This is where we as men can learn from women and their strengths. In order for a man to experience full growth the way that God intended, we need to be willing to let our walls down and invite some feminine energy into our lives. One very important example is the need for connection. Hebrews 10, verses 24 to 25 says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." This verse reminds us that we sharpen each other. We grow from learning from each other and connecting. We weren't meant to go this life alone. That's why Jesus, even though he probably really didn't need anyone, he still chose to surround himself with a group of men. And that's exactly what we're being told to do here. Now, another important part of growth is prayer and meditation. In order to hear from God and understand his words, we need to know the Spirit. That requires listening. Sitting still and listening isn't inherently masculine, but we need to do it in order to receive the gift of wisdom. And in order to gain wisdom, we need to allow the Spirit into our hearts. Spirituality in itself is a feminine trait. It requires complete vulnerability and surrender so that we can listen and learn. But in order to grow, we need to understand who we are and what we were put on this earth to do. Knowing ourselves means knowing God. Knowing God requires fully surrendering to him and allowing the Spirit into our hearts. In order to allow the Spirit into our lives, we need to let our walls down in our hearts and our minds and just sit and listen and meditate. A big part of learning is listening, and that's where wisdom comes from. And the Bible even says wisdom is one of the most powerful gifts a man can receive. Now, wisdom doesn't come from just making a mistake. It comes from being able to learn from it. Fools make the same mistakes over and over because they never learn, like it says in Proverbs chapter 26, verses 11 through 12. And one final example of how we as men can use feminine energy to grow is the need for compassion and understanding for our fellow man. As men, it's easy for us to judge someone for being weak physically or being weak at a skill that we are very skilled at. If they're not able to pull their weight, we see them as useless. But it's too easy for us to forget that we had to start somewhere as well. Now, can you think of a man who was a good mentor to you, who was patient and took the time to teach you? Aren't you forever grateful for that? Well, him taking that time to teach you and be patient with you stems from feminine energy. Men were called to be a lot of things and to do a lot of things that require some feminine energy. One of these is being a mentor. As we learn from our masculine journey, we must take a moment to show compassion and understanding and help the next man in line. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Well, we are God's children. When Jesus was with us, he had patience and compassion for those who were rejected by everyone else. His whole purpose for being here was to serve as an example of how we as Christians should live. Now, even a man without sin, meaning Jesus, could feel the pain of a sinner. So, how much more can you relate to them? What excuse do you have to judge them? Jesus served as the perfect example for us. He needed to be perfect. So we had something to strive towards. He was masculine when he needed to be, but he was also feminine when he needed to be. He never strayed away from his mission, but he always made time to show compassion for those who asked for help. Masculine energy is great for getting on God's path and staying on it, while feminine energy allows you to learn from what's on it. There's a healthy balance between the two that every one of us should learn. If we always have our walls up, we can't receive any new information and we can't gain wisdom and we can't learn and grow. But if our walls are always down, we're left defenseless to attacks from the enemy and temptations. We must stand firm in the faith while having compassion, but we must bravely step on God's path while also surrendering to Him. There's a lot that can be learned from masculine and feminine energy alike. And men, if you truly want to grow fully, if you want to grow completely as a godly man, you need to be willing and able to exercise both masculine and feminine energies and learn from it. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope this gives you a new perspective that helps you grow in your own journey. If you gained any value from this episode, please like and subscribe and comment any topics you'd like to see in the future. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll see you on the next one.